I'd be lying if I wasn't excited to drive this car with a manual transmission. I'm here to find out if this car is worth the price, or should you buy something else like a BMW M240i or even a BMW Z4, or maybe spend a bit more and get a Porsche Cayman 718. Well, there's only one way to find out. Now, Australian Toyota Supras are pretty high spec, but they also come with a pretty high price tag. This is the base model GT, which misses out on larger wheels and it doesn't get a fancier speaker system, but it gets a lot of standard features, which I'll show you just now. But that means this car will cost you just under $90,000 before on-road costs, but you are getting a lot of car for that money if you're looking for a sports car. So this color here is azure blue, and to be honest, I really like it. It reminds me a little bit of the OG Supra before this one. And look, it's not a bad color, but would I pick it personally? I might pick something else. Now we have these LED lights which have 6 projectors in them, and it's insane how good they look. I love the look of Toyota Supra lights, especially this very long daytime running light. They look great and they give it a really signature look. Along with this bulbous nose, I really quite like that quite a lot, except the license plate at the front just sort of takes away from that, unfortunately, here in Australia. Now we have some aggressive aero down below as well, and some large intakes to feed that monstrous 3-litre inline-6 turbocharged motor under here. Now, there's no secret that it requires 2 pulls of the bonnet lever to open this, just like you'd find on a BMW. What I found interesting at this original Supra launch is that when people asked about that, Toyota said it was for extra security when out on track. You want 2 hood latches instead of 1. Really like that explanation, but I'm pretty sure it's for another reason. Now, this is your 3-litre inline-6. Just look at it. I love the presentation. It's a really good engine bay. Can't deny that, but you can see some obvious BMW badges. It just has to be said here on some parts, and especially up here under the bonnet. But I do like these struts here, which help with rigidity, and you'll be getting 285 kilowatts, which is just under 400 horsepower from this motor here, and a huge amount of torque, which is 500 Newton meters of torque from this motor, all being sent to the rear wheels. Now, the quickest way to tell that you spent less money on a Toyota Supra are these 18-inch wheels. Now, personally, I'm not a huge fan of them because I love the 19-inch wheel design that you get on the GTS, but that's an easy fix if you want to save a bit of money and just put some aftermarket wheels, or even find a second-hand set of 19-inch wheels, because those look fantastic. But these don't look too bad either. And in there, you have some red brake calipers for those beefy brakes up front, and it says Supra on them, which I think is pretty cool and a nice touch. Now, these vents you can see up here, down the side, they are fake. But Toyota says that these are designed to be popped out, so you can go to the aftermarket, find a body kit, and then add extra aero to your car. That is what Toyota said these vents can do. So they may be fake, but apparently they're easy to remove to make them functional. Now, we obviously have these black A-pillars here to sort of give that floating roof effect, and we also have some contrasting mirrors here as well. And you can't deny this thing has some of the best rear haunches you've ever seen. You could literally rest a coffee cup on here if you go to a drive-through or something, because they're so wide and they give this car an amazing stance. And I also like how the lines all match up here to make it really curvy and really good looking. Personally, a lot better looking than its BMW Z4 sibling. And this is where the design really peaks for me. I love the way the double bubble roof comes down to this little spoiler integrated into the boot. I love the taillight design, but you have some more fake vents here, but at least it adds a bit more visual flair. They're not too offensive for fake vents, to be honest. Now, this rear diffuser looks great as well. You have Supra in the OG Supra script, and of course GR, because this is a Gazoo racing product, which is like AMG to Toyota. It's meant to be like the high performance range, and that's why it gets the GR badge at the back. And you also get this pretty cool looking rain light. Now, I've left the exhaust running while I'm talking to you back here because it just has that really cool rumble. It's got a presence when this car is on, which I really quite like. But these are also valves, so you should take a listen what this sounds like in normal mode first and then sports mode. Now, I'm sorry if you hated this design from day one, but I think it's one of the best designs to walk out of Toyota in a long time. It looks fantastic, it's attractive, it turns heads, and I think it is one of the best looking sports cars you can buy. And what's even better now this car's been out for a little while, there's some awesome aftermarket kits and tuning support for this car, so you can really personalize your Supra into something that is your car rather than just buying it and living with it. Now the Supra has a large hatch opening, which means you can put large items here in the rear, and even get this nice hard cargo cover to hide things if you want anyone to not look in the back of your car. Now it's nice and wide, and they've sculpted out as much space as they could back here, even though there are two big speakers there and also a large strut bar that's going to stop big items being pushed all the way to the front. Now under the boot floor, you're not going to find a spare tire, but you are going to find your battery, which helps with weight distribution. So jumping into this car, I usually recommend bum in first, then your feet to avoid any embarrassment. And then if you are jumping in, if you have keen eyes, you'll see that this says BMW Toyota Supra on a sticker here on the side, and it reminds you that it was built near Belgium. So if you have any hesitancy that this is a Japanese product, well, there's your reminder that it was actually built in Europe. Now closing this door, nice solid door feel. I love the materials in here, all soft and squidgy, plenty of nice stitching, carbon fiber here in the middle. We have some gloss black plastic, which isn't used too excessively, which I like. And I also really like these seats. These are leather seats, and they have really nice stitching support, and they are the higher grade seats that we get here in Australia. There's no sort of poverty pack that you get for this car in Australia, which is really quite nice. Now this steering wheel has plenty of nice stitching. It's not my favorite steering wheel design, but I think it's growing on me. I don't really like this sort of fake sort of open area. It's just blocked off by a bit of plastic, but the rest of it is pretty good, and it feels nice in the hand. And I like the fact it's round instead of a flat bottom steering wheel. But I do think that for less money, the Nissan Z gets a superior steering wheel. Now starting up this car, you press the start engine stop button and you get a bit of exciting sound. But that sound is to remind you that this was a collaboration project with BMW. Now in terms of storage space, you have some little cup holders here, you have a little open sort of cubby there. You can put stuff behind the seat if you really must, but there's nothing too useful, and you do have a direct access to the boot, which I think is pretty useful to have. It makes it easy for road trips. Now you have all this BMW infotainment and climate controls, and even the iDrive system, which is all familiar if you know what an interior of BMW is, but it's not a problem if that means we get a product like this from Toyota. I think put as much BMW as you want in it if it means that we get a Toyota Supra like this. Now in terms of visibility, it's pretty limited. We have very low slung windows. It looks great from the outside, but it means that you do have pretty restricted visibility in terms of if you're used to driving around in a big glass house. It takes a little while to get used to, but ultimately I found it to be pretty easy to drive around and park. And especially helps that you get a reversing camera on this 8.8-inch display. This is a touchscreen. It doesn't go away, unfortunately, but at least Toyota have put their own customization here, so it's kind of hard to see any sort of BMW models or anything like that. They sort of replace those with Toyota Supras, and even put a little Toyota Supra logo when you start up the car, which I really quite like. But I would have liked to have seen this tuck away, because it would have helped this interior feel a bit timeless, thanks to this thing not having anything too fancy, and especially thanks to this driver's display, which is a digital driver's display, except it's got like an analog element to it. It's one of my favorite driver's displays out at the moment, to be honest, because it's a really nice mix of analog and digital, because it keeps that analog display on all the time, but at least you get some digital readouts, so it makes it easy to read during the day and night, and also really useful to go through different bits of information. Now let's talk about this center area. First of all, you do have a wireless charging pad with some little bits of storage if you want to turn that off, so you can just put things there, and you even have a USB charging port and a 12-volt socket there as well. So probably stuff you're going to use for a dash camera if you go to a track day. Now it's time to talk about this shifter. So this shifter is not just any parts bin product. This was a very important project for Toyota. They heard their customers and they said, we want a manual Supra, and so they went out and built one. This thing is weighted up to 200 grams, so it's meant to be heavier and feel a bit more weighted in its shift. It's got a really precise movement as well, which I really quite like, and it even gives you a bit more space so you don't accidentally smash your knuckles up here on the climate controls. But you will find that if you're getting used to it for a little while, that the second to third shift might see you accidentally tap this area, which I've done on a few occasions, but I've stopped since because I've learned how to use it. Now, shifting into reverse is kind of interesting. There's no up and down leverage in this thing. You sort of got to push down a bit firm and then find reverse. So it means it's not too hard to accidentally slip into that, which I find pretty good. I love the look and feel of it as well. It's really quite timeless in that way as well. It does have a GR logo there to remind you you are in a Gazoo racing product. Now, while that engine is awesome to look at and sounds great, it's worth asking the question, does this cost as much as a BMW to service? Well, it doesn't. Toyota caps off the servicing for just under $400 per service, which is pretty good. And here's the other thing. This motor isn't just a regular BMW motor. This one has been scrutinized by Toyota relentlessly. The collaboration took a little while because Toyota kept sending back parts saying, this is not up to scratch. We want our parts to last last for a long time. So you need to remake this and then we'll be happy to sign it off. So this might just be one of the most reliable BMW motors to leave a BMW factory thanks to Toyota's input. All right, so let's get going. So what we have here is an inline-6. It's a 3-liter turbocharged setup. And what I love about it so much more than a V6 is just how pure this sound is. Like this, ready? Oh, yes, how good. Now, I'm gonna start off in comfort mode to tell you what's going on. So we have a more relaxed setup. I can feel everything still. I feel like very connected to this car because you sit so far back, so that means you get a nice light front end, and you have a staggered tire setup, so I can put my power down on the rear and actually use it and actually feel like I can maneuver this thing quite similarly to a Mazda MX-5, just with a lot more power and just a bit bigger and a little bit heavier. Now this transmission here is really special. It's been developed by Toyota specifically for the Supra, and they've weighted it with a 200-gram weight, and they've sort of made a bit more space for it here, so it means you can really enjoy shifting. Now I won't lie, when I first got into this thing, I thought the clutch was really heavy for a second, and I thought that the shifts were really awkward, but once I got used to this setup, I found it to be a very pleasant transmission. It's one of the best manual transmissions you can buy right now. And so why is that? Well, once you get used to the clutch feel, you realize it's quite precise. You've got a nice precise bite point, it blends in really well, and then you just sort of get used to pushing it all the way to the floor to activate everything you need to do your auto rev matching. Now, like through a corner here, check this, like, it's just so flat and stable. Like, I can just almost do this with one hand and then head out the other side. It's so nice to drive this thing, and it's just far more precision than the Nissan Z, and that's sort of what you're paying for more. Is one, obviously the build quality's up, and also I do like the inline-6 a bit better than the V6, even though the V6 produces more power, and then two, just how much of an surgical instrument this thing feels through corners compared to the Nissan Z. Like, you can wind up the power mid-corner, and that inline-6 is buttery smooth. It's almost got like a V12 characteristic to it, and it sings. I love it. I really love the sound this thing makes, and that's just in comfort mode. If we go into sport mode, you get a bit more burble and action out the back, but you also get a stiffened ride thanks to some active dampers, and this thing just rides so well. And then when you're in sport mode, you just get all the feel you really need in a car like this. Now, reminder, this isn't a hardcore GR Supra. This is just the base model manual GR Supra, and it just, like, if you love an inline-6 or a 6-cylinder sound, it's going to be hard to jump into a Porsche Cayman, for example, which just has the flat 4. This is so much nicer. And look, it just feels so lively in here too. And you've got to remember that this is a Toyota product as well as a BMW product. So it means that the engine isn't just your normal inline-6 you'd find from a BMW, except it's been scrutinized and overlooked and tested by Toyota's engineers to pass Toyota's needs and wants with this setup. Now, I really love the auto blipping. It does a really good job of blending to the downshifts, but it also does a little bit of blending on the upshift. Now, I love the seating position here. It's almost perfect. I mean, you don't really need anything more aggressive than these seats. They hold you in quite nice. And I could just drive this thing all day with this manual transmission. It's actually surprisingly easy to use in bumper-to-bumper traffic as well. When you put it into comfort mode, it's not jerky by any means. It's got a really nice, smooth power and clutch and accelerator setup. I've heard someone say that the steering could be a little bit more communicative, but I don't really see the need for it to be a bit more intense than this. Especially, it doesn't really fit the profile of this car, which is trying to be like a GT sports car. It's not meant to be a hardcore track setup, so I actually think the steering is pretty appropriate for this car, and it feels nice and precise and weights up nicely through a corner. Now, the weight transfer in here is nice and predictable. The brake feel is just a little bit dull on the first engagement, and then it bites hard after that. And we don't have any sort of cross-drill big brakes on this. So I've heard on a track session, people have been running them, they've actually had like little to no brake fade, which is pretty good for a stock solid disc setup. So, I mean, that should be good. I haven't experienced anything out of the ordinary either with this car, so that's a good thing too. Now, I really like how this car is set up. It's something that feels feels like it's very, very capable through corners and something you want to exploit on track. Out on the road, this is too much power and too much torque to hold onto your license for a long period of time, because you will lose it because this thing is so damn quick. Now what's cool is that when you go into a stop like this, you take your foot off the clutch in normal mode and the engine will shut off. So that helps this become a bit more daily driver friendly. You could definitely buy this and daily it if you know you're not going to carry more than one person with you or anything too large. If you are someone who's pretty decent on, you know, look, the balance here is just phenomenal. It's so fun to throw around. It's a really easy to live with sports car. It turns heads and it's a very comfortable daily driver. It's got all these things going for it, and the only thing left that I would love to do is just really rip this around a racetrack, because out on the road I can only do so much, and that's when something maybe like a Toyota GR86 would become more appealing, because you can use more of that power out on these public roads. But here I'm just restricted with what I can do legally, which is just, you know, a downside about living in Australia. But at least, you know, if you go on some back roads like this, you find some open road, you can have a ton of fun in a car that isn't going to break your back, and it's going to be a really pleasant driving experience. Now, I think the Toyota Supra is one of the best driving sports cars you can buy today. The torque, the turbo, the rear-wheel drive, the precision, and then to top it all off, that manual transmission. That thing just really completes the package here for me. I love the stock sound. I love the way this thing looks. I really, really like how it drives. It's pretty nimble compared to the less expensive Nissan Z. And look, against European competitors, and something I would even consider sacrilege from my mouth, Porsche, I think I'd go out and buy one of these and save my money. But obviously you want to know my opinion, because I've driven both quite extensively, the Nissan Z or this. Now, the Nissan Z is just going to be the bang for buck. It's going to have 400 horsepower. It's going to have a twin turbo V6. It's going to have a manual transmission as well. That's going to be something, if you really can't spend any more money than that, you should just get that. But if you have the budget for both, you might enjoy tuning the Nissan Z to make it something a bit more personal. But out of the box, I think the Toyota Supra just has the edge in terms of agility, sound, driving experience, premium product in terms of the build quality and construction of this thing. I kind of prefer it overall compared to a Nissan Z. Smash that like button with your mouse so hard that your screen cracks if you like this review, dislike it if you didn't. Make sure you follow us on TikTok and Instagram for more car content at Product Review Cars. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one.